One thing I wanted to ask about was what was the inflation like in Mexico? So in Japan, they are straight Weimaring their currency. It's unbelievable to see products. It might not be like Zimbabwe or the Weimar Republic, but in real time, we are watching products in the grocery store go up. Not a little bit, a lot. To the point that me and my wife bought a year's worth of rice as an investment. Not for food security and starve to death conspiracy crazy people, but like literally it was like, this just will save us $200 if we just buy a year's worth of rice and keep it in the closet, right? Like just as an investment alone, right? What was that like in Mexico?
It felt non-existent. So I mean, living here for the last 2 years, you don't see things more expensive. I get street tacos and I pay like, I don't know, 25 pesos for a street taco, and they were 25 pesos 2 years ago. They're still 25 pesos, and they didn't take any meat out. It's the same amount of meat. The eggs are the same. Eggs are the same price. Eggs, bread, milk. I mean, everything's still relatively the same price. I think Mexico reported somewhere between 3 and 5% for the last 4 or 5 years for inflation, but you don't see big changes in grocery bills. I know in the U.S., I'm hearing people like that once ordered on Amazon a year ago are paying almost double for things a year later, and they've got their previous Amazon order to support, the inflation that they're seeing. So, what I think is happening is the United States is suffering through. Well, I know it's happening because I've compared it to gold. So one of the things that's interesting with the U.S. dollar is when it came off the gold standard, it still tracked with gold from 1976 until about 2006, six-ish. They tracked pretty much together. So if you go back and you look at gold prices and how much it went up from year to year, and you look at the inflation that the government reported, they were very aligned. It was a one-to-one correlation. And then starting about 2006, it became worse. But from 2006 to 2023 or 20, yeah, end of 23, instead of being a one-to-one relationship, it was a one-to-two relationship. So for two 2%, every 2% the gold increased, they would report 1% for the dollar. So since 2006, our inflation has been double what the government is reporting. And that's why things are getting so much more expensive. And then that's accelerating now so that, I think 24 is probably going to come in at 3 or 4 times what was reported based on the price of gold. And so I get people that say, why would you compare the dollar to gold? And it's like, well, if you're going to really look at inflation, instead of looking at a bucket of products that the federal government thinks we should be looking at, that they change, constantly, there's no better marker of inflation than gold. So if somebody has a better idea for what you can compare it to besides gold, I'd love to hear that argument. But there's no better tool to compare inflation to than gold. And so all you got to do is look at what's reported, look at what gold prices are, and you're like, wow, our dollar's not worth 1/10 what it was 20 years ago. It's worth 1/20th what it was 20 years ago. So
One thing Michael Saylor talks about quite a bit in Bitcoin and the crypto world is when inflation hits, even when it's low, right at their targeted numbers of 3%, a year, which people don't realize that means in 25 years your dollar's cut in half. So it's not small to say 3% a year, right? Which people kind of blow off as small. But one of his biggest points is, since the 70s, 80s, when we really started to see the financial markets deregulation and different things like that, kind of reconfigure, for lack of better words, this amorphous kind of what I was talking about with the knot, these things that just seem so convoluted. He had talked about like all of the inflation it wasn't gone and they weren't hitting a 3%. It was just inflating asset prices. And we have been brainwashed into thinking that's a good thing, but it's not. We have just inflated asset prices throughout. In Mexico, when you saw inflation numbers that were so small, but real estate rising and land rising, was the inflation just shuffling into, like you've said things like there are prime real estate that will be on par with the United States very soon, right? That's where my fear goes in, is that the inflation is just simply being funneled into asset prices in Mexico. Is that, am I off when I say that?
Yeah, I don't think that's where it's. I mean, it's true that property values are, since I've been here, have went up about 10% each year, which is pretty good. But it appears more to be driven by supply and demand than anything else, because you know, I know people in the West don't want to believe it, but a lot of people are moving to Mexico, and a lot of people prefer living in Mexico over their Western countries. So whether you're, Canadians, Australians, pretty much the ones I see from Western civilization are U.S., Canadian, and Australians. But to a person, they all prefer living here, and then they tell their friends and family, and eventually you get more people interested in moving here. And so the supply and demand is what's not in sync, and that's it's close, but that's what's driving up the prices, I believe.
What I'm most interested in is, especially now because of trends of the economy, and it's not your forte per se, where you have explicitly said, I'm not much of an acquirer. I don't really want to acquire businesses, but my passion is to build them from scratch. But for me, I love acquiring. It's my skill set of project management works perfectly into systems that already exist. What are you seeing as opportunity in the acquisition space within Mexico of pre-existing businesses that might already have some infrastructure in place?
I think I see more opportunity. I'm going to divert your question probably, but I'm not. I don't have visibility enough to know what acquisitions would make sense. I know there's a Chinese manufacturer that does the foam concrete blocks that are significantly lighter. They're wanting to expand here, so they're selling manufacturing plants for like $3.5 million. If somebody wants to come here and start one of those, they'll build it for them. That's a good opportunity. The biggest opportunity I see, I think, is basically, you're familiar with Alibaba, right? So that doesn't exist in Mexico. There's no Alibaba in Mexico. And when I was going through the MBA program at Ohio State, we were doing trips to China, and they were doing courses on how do you get products from China into the United States. So how do you get all the manufacturing done? Who does the Victoria's Secret's made there. Most of the weight equipment is made there. I mean, tons of stuff are made in China. And so we actually had college trips to China to meet with manufacturers to figure out, how to get things done and where to go. So that whole piece is missing. So you got Mexico, the largest manufacturer, exporting into the United States, and there's no Alibaba system to make the process easier, and there's no colleges coming to Mexico to learn about that. So I think there's a huge opportunity there. I know there's at least one company I know that's working on that. But as far as like buying and merging, I mean, that's out of my expertise. I'm not. I'm looking at new businesses. So like I'm doing the MLS, right? Because there's no MLS here, and then after that, I'm probably going to do a oh, like when I rent cars, you can rent a car here for like say 500 a month, but then they want you to pay, I don't know, $70 a day, so another $2,100 for insurance. So the car cost 500, the insurance cost 2,100. If you had a company come in here that would say, okay, we're going to insure you for say double what they charge in the US. So say it's like $300 to get insurance full coverage on a car, then that company is going to do extremely well, and everybody's going to be somewhat happy that they can get low cost insurance that covers them. So I'm fixated on opportunities of creating businesses, not necessarily merging them together. So I'm trying to think, but nothing's coming to my head or at the moment.
What's going on, guys? If you like that clip right there, you will love the full interview. You can check that out right there. I'll see you on the next video. Oh, and subscribe because we got a lot of big things coming up in the near future.